Morning, everybody. I am still going through the list of everybody who joined. And I'm going to have to ask a few people who I don't recognize their initials or names, but bear with me for a minute while I put all this in. All right. So I see a Keith N. Where are you from, Keith?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm Keith Newman from the town of Gilbert. I'm filling in for Kyle Maris today.
I know you, Keith.
Yeah, I used to be on Mag Pop Tack a long time ago, remember?
Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be back in this meeting.
Yeah. I see somebody says JG.
Yep, Josh Granlinard, City of Mesa.
Hey, Josh. Uh, let's see. Malin, or I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing Malin or Malin. Remind me where you're from.
Milan, Milan Pankiewicz, City of Tempe.
Tempe, yes. Thank you. I think we have way more than we need for a quorum. Yeah, Madam Chair, we do have a quorum. We can go ahead and start when you are ready.
Perfect. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay, Scott?
I can hear you, Crystal. Thank you.
Okay, great. Good morning, members of the Pop TAC Committee. This meeting is now called to order, and we will begin the meeting with a roll call of all members.
Let's see. Tracy Clark from ADOT.
I'm here.
Let's see. Apache Junction, I think I saw Nick.
Yes, present.
Cole Hunger or anyone from Avondale. Andrea Marquez or anyone from Buckeye. Stacy Bridge Denzak, I think that's
here.
Anyone from Cave Creek. Sam Andrea. First one. Maybe you got bored and left. Anyone from Florence? Farhad from Fountain Hills?
Here.
Anyone from Gila Bend? Then we saw her from Keith from Gilbert. Still here with us, Keith? Yes?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Great. Anyone from Glendale? Christian from Goodyear?
Here.
Anyone from Guadalupe or Litchfield Park? Rudy from Maricopa?
Here.
Adam Cannon, Maricopa County?
Here.
Josh from Mesa?
Here.
Brandon, Paradise Valley?
Present.
Robert Kufas, Peoria?
Present.
Who do we have from Phoenix? David? Neal?
Yep, Dave Neal, Phoenix.
And I think I saw Tara Harmon, Pinal County.
Yes, present.
Sarah Clark, Queen Creek.
Here.
Welcome back. Anyone from Salt River? Then who do we have? Adam Urone from Scottsdale.
Present.
No, no Taylor.
No Taylor today.
Lloyd from Surprise. Okay. Mylan from Tempe.
Present.
Jeff Wilkerson, Valley Metro.
Here.
Dee McGarry, Wickenburg.
Here.
Anyone from Youngtown? And then I see Bryant Powell from Apache Junction.
Hello, I'm here. Thank you.
Anybody I didn't name? Okay, thank you. Roll call is done.
Thank you. Our next item is call to the audience. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MEG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. Staff, do we have any written comments for this item?
Madam Chair, we do not.
Thank you. Our next item is the approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 6th?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Rudy. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Bryant.
Thank you, Bryant. We have a motion from Rudy and a second from Bryant. We will have those participating in the meeting online now take part in a voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. We need to see the faces.
Cut out.
Crystal, I think you froze.
Please leave your cameras on until the roll call vote so that staff can count the people's names whose cameras are not on. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? I'll give everyone a minute to turn their cameras on.
This is a new procedure. This means I don't have to read everybody's name again.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Please leave your cameras on. Staff, can you take a roll call vote of the members participating virtually who did not turn on their camera?
Dee McGarry,
Yes, sorry, I don't have camera access
fine.
to the computer.
Brandon McMahon,
Aye.
Sarah Clark,
Aye.
Sam Andrea. Sam, we can't hear you. I don't know if you're still with us, but I think that was it.
Okay, motion passes. Item 4 is a presentation on the 23 MEG municipal resident population updates and methodology. Mr. Bridwell will present this item. This item is for information, discussion, and possible action. Scott?
I guess I'm muted too. Scott, looks like you're muted. We were both muted.
Sorry about that. It's only been 3 years. I'm still figuring it out, I guess. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
And hear me? Okay, great. I'm Scott Bridwell. I'm a modeling analyst here at MAG, and I'm happy to be here with you this morning to discuss the 2023 municipal population update. I'll direct your attention to attachment number 1, where there is a more detailed accounting of the estimates and the update, as well as a methodology section, which details in depth the method that we're employing to create these. And so the goal of today's presentation really is to give a little bit of extra context to the update and perhaps field any questions or concerns that anyone might have. And then at the end of the presentation, we're requesting an adoption of these, and so we can start moving this through the committee process. Okay, so this is something that we do every year, pretty much this exact same time every year. It's prescribed per Arizona State Executive Order that population estimates for the places and towns will be submitted to the Department of Economic Security at the end of December. And we developed these in conjunction with the state demographer from the Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity. The state demographer really is responsible for creating county level control totals, and the state demographer also generates the place level estimates for all the places that are outside of Maricopa and Pinal counties. We are also developing these in conjunction with the Central Arizona Association of Governments, and they tend to provide data for the agencies within Pinal County that are not members of MAG. So these get used for a lot of different applications. One of the common ones is to use these for home rule, our expenditure limits. We use these for our base year, for projections, for membership dues, weighted voting, and then just various kind of miscellaneous member agency requests and also internal MAG requests as well. So before I jump into this, I just kind of want to cite some recent demographic trends that we're seeing that kind of influence how we are approaching these estimates. First is really kind of a continued decline in fertility rates and also natural change. We're still in the positive natural change category, but it's definitely been on the decline since 2010. And that's something that we're continuing to see this year. A newer thing I think this year, and this is something that Maggie and Scott Wilkin will get into in greater depth in the next presentation, is that I think we're seeing a decline really in geographic mobility in terms of people that are making moves and deciding to change residences. At the same time that we're seeing this, we're also seeing a really big increase in housing supply this year. This is one of the bigger increases in residential completions that we've seen for quite some time. And we're also within that seeing a larger share of that going into apartments, multifamily, and also more the rent for own single family rental complexes as well. And as we're seeing that, there also tends to be a decline in the multifamily absorption, and then also that's causing some increase in vacancy as well. So the methodology that we're using here, this is pretty similar to what we use for most years. We're starting off with the Census 2020 redistricting file, and from that's essentially sort of like our base that we're coming off of. And from that, we have various population categories, housing units, and then also occupancy characteristics like persons per household, vacancy rates, that kind of thing. And then at the county level, this is primarily work that's being done by the state demographer in the Office of Economic Opportunity, but they're tracking things like births and deaths, changes in school enrollment, driver's license ID counts, Medicare, and also Social Security enrollment. And then at the municipal or place level, the stuff that we're doing, the sub-county stuff, we're tracking residential completions, changes in group quarters, and also various annexations. So this is a pretty simple slide, but I just really wanted to convey here is that there's essentially kind of two buckets that we're using in order to get to a total population. There's a population in group quarters, so things like dorms and prisons and nursing homes. And then there's a population in households like your typical household. So in terms of the methodology for how we're approaching group quarters population, the way that we do this is we use Census 2020 group quarters population by place as a jumping off point. And then there's various group quarters facilities that MAG tracks and collects data from. And basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to track the change in that subset of facilities between the time of the census and also the time of the fiscal year. So for instance, we have a contact at ASU that gives us updates in the dorm populations. So when we have that change, we then basically just apply that to the 2020 base, and that gives us our update for our 2023 group quarters. And the one thing that's a little bit different this year is that four of our members have participated in the post-census group quarters review update, and this is essentially like a challenge process where a city could submit a challenge to the Census Bureau, basically saying that they thought that they missed group quarters population census 2020. So this has no impact in terms of actually changing census 2020 numbers. It really only impacts the estimates that are going forward from that. So Florence, Goodyear, Tempe, and Phoenix all provided requests, and they were all accepted. The catch here is that the census provides letters indicating that they accepted the request, but they have not really provided any hard amount for like what the amount they're actually requesting. So at the current time, the assumption that we're making within these estimates is that the amount that the member agency requested is the amount that was granted. But this may change pending additional information from the Census Bureau. One of the things they've cited is that they published their own estimates that might give an indication of the amount of the challenge that they accepted. So that's group quarters. Moving into the household population. In a sense, what we have here are really two levels of analysis that we're doing. The first is the modified composite method. This is primarily conducted by the Office of Economic Opportunity, the state demographer. And this can kind of be viewed as like a top-down approach where we're looking at overall county characteristics and trying to track their changes over time. This method down in here, the house unit method, this is what we're doing at the place level, looking at things like residential completions. And when we're doing this, we're basically deriving an initial estimate of what we would get by place using the housing unit method. We then sum that at the county, compare it with what is coming out of the state demographer's office, and then from that arrive at an overall county control total. And then once we have that, then that control total is then used to adjust those initial housing unit method estimates that we had, and that's how we arrive at our household population. So to elaborate a little bit on the composite method, essentially what the composite method is doing is it's trying to break different age cohorts up and then attach them to administrative records that they can track changes in. Now, typically this would be done by looking at sort of a census ratio. So you would look at basically what was the data item at the time of the census. But due to some data availability issues, instead of doing this, they're just looking at the percent change in the whatever administrative item that they're tracking versus last year. So in this situation here, so for population 0 to 4, we are looking at changes in basically births over the last 5 years, and then subtracting that, the deaths among 0 to 4 age over the last 5 years. So essentially like a survival population. So if we're looking at 2022 versus 2023, we see that Maricopa County has a negative 0.5% change, whereas Pinal County has a 3.7% change. Moving into the next cohort is 5. Oh, and I have a typo there. My apologies. This is actually population aged 5 to 17, not 15 to 17. And what's the item that's being used here is the Arizona Department of Education school enrollment. And looking at this over time, again, Maricopa County has a slight decline this year over last year, negative 0.9% change. And Pinal County is exhibiting a 2.3% change. Then one of the bigger cohorts is the 18 to 64 cohort. And this is actually the cohort that we've had trouble with in the past just because the driver's license data has had some changes in the system and it's been hard to track consistent changes through time, but it looks like they've sorted out some of those issues. And so luckily we're getting some of those now. And so we're seeing increases in driver's license and IDs across both Maricopa and Pinal County. So that's what's happening there. And then the final cohort of interest is the population 65 plus. And this is using Medicare enrollment data. And again, we're seeing positive changes across each. One thing that is sort of interesting is that there was a much bigger change sort of in the 2019 to 2020 period. And so things are still increasing, but that is kind of leveling off just as demographic momentum is kind of easing. And a lot of those people are moving into that category already. This is one area where sometimes this is augmented with Social Security data as well. Right now, Social Security data is not available until I think middle of November. And so as that becomes available, that might get incorporated into this as well. So that's the top-down county level approach. In terms of how we're doing things more from the bottom up, this is similar to what we do most years. Essentially, what we're doing is we're taking the change in housing units or the growth in housing units, and we're then from that trying to derive a population growth from that. And so the overall approach is to update our housing stock based on the completions that we've collected and also the annexations. Take the completions for the current year and multiply that by the occupancy factors from Census 2020, which gives us a growth in those units. We bring in then also the annex population into it. As the previous slide showed, once we have that, that's sort of an unconstrained amount. We then can take that and we can apply the county level control to it so that the sum of the places matches the county level control. And this has all been on these steps 1 through 4. This is all based on the growth itself. And once we have that growth, then we can apply that to the previous year's population to get the updated 2023 household population. And in terms of housing unit growth, this has been a big year for Maricopa County. This is one of the bigger years since, I believe, like 2008 or 2009. What's interesting about it is that in terms of the composite method, it's showing so many declines, but at the same time, we're seeing this increase in completions. But a lot of that is being attributed, I think, to a lot of multifamily being developed within that as well. So in terms of how that all shakes out at the county level, what we're seeing is really a change this year over last year of about 62,000 or so in Maricopa County, about 13,000 or so in Pinal County, with about 6,000 of that being in the MAG MPA. So the MAG MPA is the total, including all agencies across both counties, is about 68,500. Okay, these are the then place level estimates, and these should match what's in attachment 1. And the action that we're looking for is someone to recommend approval of the draft July 1, 2023 municipality resident population updates for MAG member agencies, provided that the metropolitan statistical area control total is within 2% of the final control total. And that final caveat there is just because the state demographer's office is still in the process of finalizing those county level controls. So there might be a little bit of movement there, but we don't anticipate there to be a whole lot of it. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Scott. That was very informative. Do any of the members have any questions or comments for Scott?
This is Jeff Wilkerson with Valley Metro, and I have a question on what constitutes group quarters. You had that early on, and I did not see how that kind of came into your population estimates. You did talk about schools, I think is one of them. Are there other things for that you consider group quarters?
So group quarters are we kind of treat those as 2 separate pots. There's sort of a household population pot, which would be like things like school enrollment would impact. And then there's a different pot, which is group quarters. And group quarters constitutes things like dorms, prison population. Those are the big ones. There would also be some nursing care facilities in there as well.
Do you track how group quarters have increased or decreased in population over this time period?
Yes.
Like prisons?
Yes, we have contacts at the Department of Corrections. So we have different contacts that provide different updates for us. We don't necessarily have an updated occupancy number for every group quarter. For instance, a lot of the smaller nursing homes, we don't necessarily get updates for some of those. But the larger facilities like the prisons and the dorms, we have contacts with.
And that group quarter is included in that population. I think it was a previous slide where you said the bottom up, where you start with the population. So it's population of households and population of group quarters.
Yep.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks for the question.
Does anybody else have a question for Scott? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the 2023 population updates and methodology?
Christian from Goodyear, I'd recommend the approval of the population updates and methodology.
Thank you, Christian. Do we have a second?
David from Phoenix, I'll second.
Thank you, David. We have a motion from Christian and a second from David. We're going to go through the same process again. Please turn on your cameras and unmute your audio if you're able to. For those who cannot or do not want to, staff will conduct a roll call vote. And please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote so that staff can get an accurate count. Okay, can I have a voice vote of those in the room and online? Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Staff, do you want to do a roll call vote of those who weren't able to turn on their cameras?
I will do that now. Dee McGarry,
Aye.
Brandon McMahon,
Yes.
Sarah Clark,
Aye.
Sam Andrea. The motion passes.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, number 5. Item number 5 is a presentation on MAG staff's update on their analysis of the housing market and economy. Maggie Wong will provide the update, and this item is on for information and discussion. Maggie?
Thank you. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So good morning. My name is Maggie Wong. I'm a research analyst here at MAG. Today, I'll be walking us through some of the economic and housing trends for our region. So starting off, we're seeing that Maricopa County continues to be one of the top counties in terms of population growth. We saw the largest population growth in the nation, adding 56,831 people from 2021 to 2022. You can see here that the top 10 counties are mostly larger Texas and Florida counties, but we are leading in terms of numeric growth. We're also seeing that unemployment is trending down from highs at the start of the COVID pandemic back in 2020. We are now at the same level as the national average at 3.8%. Inflation is also trending down in the region. We can see the Phoenix MSA here in green compared to the national average in gray. It's fallen from a peak around this time last year and is now at the same level as the US at 3.7%. Certain components are higher, such as gas, food, and rent, but overall, our inflation trending down is a good thing. Now looking at cost of living, this cost of living index uses prices of certain goods and services across the nation, and it sets a base of 100 as the national average cost of living, and we are above that. So this is a metric where we do not want a higher ranking. What's concerning is that 2 years ago in 2021, we were ranked 18th, but we are now ranked 12th and are seeing a higher cost of living compared to peer metros. Now looking at employment, we are diversifying our economy, which is a good thing. The biggest sectors of growth in employment by industry can be seen here. We've got transportation and warehousing, information technology. You may notice that retail did not make it to this top 10 chart. That's because it only grew by 5% in this time period. And it used to be a key sector, but this is good that we're diversifying our economy coming out of the economic downturn from the pandemic. In terms of job recovery, our region also saw a quicker recovery than the nation, so we are seeing good trends here. Now taking a look at residential completions, this chart shows the total completions for single family and multifamily by fiscal year. We can see that back in 2005, before the housing downturn, completions were around 48,000 per year. There was a significant drop in 2011 to just under 6,000 completions. But then in the latest fiscal year, we're at about 36,000 residential completions. So what we're seeing is that we're back to 2007 pre-recession levels. And you can also see that multifamily units now make up a greater share. So back in 2005, multifamily units made up about 14%, but now it's at 40%. This next chart you may recognize, we've shown it before. These are sales transactions by price bins over the years. It's now been updated to include data through Q2 of 2023. So the dark blue part of the bar shows sale transactions under $200,000, and the light green shows sales transactions from $200,000 to $300,000. So focusing on the green and the dark blue categories, we can see that huge drop from 2011 until now. But what we're seeing most recently in that 2023 column is that there's a change to the trend. So rather than a dramatic decrease, it's looking a little more stable. What we're thinking is that that looks like sales prices might be coming down. And so those green and blue bins are adjusting a little bit and stabilizing rather than continuing that dramatic drop. So median sale price has decreased 9% since the last peak in June of 2022. Back then, the median sale price was $475,000, and as of last month, it is now at $431,000. So we're seeing the housing market stabilizing and the sale price is coming down. This map shows median sale price change by zip code across the region. So from the light and dark orange colors, we can see that there's mostly been a decrease in median sale price across the region. There are still some areas with increases in the light and dark green, but overall, we're seeing that stabilization of sale prices. Looking at MLS data, we can see that total inventory has dropped, so the number of homes listed for sale. The gray line here shows the inventory from September 2021 to 2022, while that turquoise green blue line shows this past year. So last September, there were just under 23,000 units listing for sale, whereas this year we're at under 16,000 units. We're also seeing that average days on market has increased from 48 days last year to 56 days this year. Now switching gears to look at apartment rent. This is a pretty similar chart to what we saw earlier, but now focusing on apartment rent bins. So the dark blue here represents apartment units with rent under $500. You can see how that has virtually disappeared since 2018, 2019. The light green is showing units with rent ranging from $500 to $1,000. Similar to before, we see that decreasing trend for the green and dark blue sections since 2010. But in the most recent year, Q2 of this year, we're seeing it starting to stabilize as well. We're also seeing that newer apartments post 2018, and these are generally more of the luxury apartments being built, have a 15% higher rent compared to all apartments. And this trend has held steady for the past few years. We're seeing a similar trend to all apartments, just a step higher. Multifamily rental vacancy rate has increased in recent years. Back in 2021, there was a low of 4.9%, which has increased pretty significantly to 9.5% as of Q2 of this year. This is a good trend to see in terms of more availability in the market. And now we're going to look more closely at availability and affordability of vacant apartment units through a set of maps. So this one is the first one, and we're keeping it simple. The green bubbles are showing vacant apartment units in the region. And the size of the green bubble represents the number of vacant units. So the larger green bubbles means that it's a complex with more vacant units. What we're seeing here is that there are 33,670 units that are vacant across the region. This next map changes the green bubbles to a red outline if the rent is greater than $2,000, which is 40% of the median renter income. So you can see how in different parts of the region, while there are vacant units, they are asking for rent $2,000 or more. Another step down, this map is now showing vacant apartment units that are affordable at 30% of median renter income, which is $1,500. You can see that from the last map, a majority of the green bubbles before have been turned into that red outline because rent is greater than $1,500. So when we're looking at this level, only 11,500 units are vacant and have rent less than $1,500. So again, you can see that there are units available. There are apartments available, the green bubbles, but it's about where they're available. So they are not all across the region, only in certain areas. Back in 2021, the number was about 6,300 apartment units vacant at 30% of median renter income. So we do have more available vacant affordable units, but there is concern for affordability and perhaps access to jobs. So based on where you can afford to live and where you work, there may be higher costs for transportation to get to your job. And the final map in this set shows vacant apartment units affordable under 25% of median renter income. So now those red outlines are vacant units with rent greater than $1,250. And there are less than 5,000 units that are available and affordable at this rate. I'm going to go back so we can just look at that this set of maps once more. So once again, this one is just showing all vacant apartment units. This one is showing available apartment units with rent less than $2,000 if we're focusing on the green bubbles. Now this is vacant units with rent less than $1,500. And then vacant units with rent less than $1,250. So you can just see how much that shrinks as we continue stepping down in terms of looking at rent. So moving on, we also took a look at short-term rentals in the Phoenix metro area, and there has been a 17% reduction in active short-term rental units. From the chart on the right, you can see that there was a big increase from 2021 to 2022, but that has dropped in 2023. The map on the left is showing change from 2022 to 23 in short-term rentals. Green is where there have been increases, and orange shows decreases. Now looking at trends in institutional buyers, and these are large investors such as Redfin or Zillow. A year ago, about 25% of sales transactions were to these institutional buyers. That has significantly dropped. There was a decreasing trend, and it is now at 13% of sales that were to these large buyers. And if you look at the historical trend pre-2020, it typically did range from 10 to 15%, so we're about in that range again. One way of looking at housing affordability is this Housing Opportunity Index, and it is measured by the share of homes sold that are affordable at median household income. So Phoenix MSA is here in blue and the US is in gray. Currently, we're at 30% of homes sold that are affordable. This is a lower share than the US, which had 40% of homes that were affordable. This is an increase from last year when we had hit a low of 18%, but we are still lower than we were before. You can see that there was a pretty major drop after Q2 of 2020. Back then, we were at around 70% affordability. And from 2018 to 2020, we were actually more affordable than the US, but have really dropped since then. We have a little table on the right where you can see how we compare to other metros across the nation. We have better affordability than a region like San Diego, but we're still trailing behind the national average and other peer metros. Cost burden is another important aspect of measuring housing affordability. So in the Phoenix MSA, there are 256,000 severely cost burdened households. So these are households that are spending 50% or more of their income on housing. And so they would have to spend less on other expenditures such as transportation, healthcare, and other expenses due to the burden of their housing expenses. The map here shows that as the shade of kind of the blue-green gets darker, that means that there are more, there's a larger number of households in that zip code that are severely cost burdened. And we're seeing that overall 15% of households in the Phoenix metro area are severely cost burdened, but specifically looking at multifamily renter households, 27% are severely cost burdened. We're also seeing monthly eviction filings going up, and they have surpassed pre-pandemic levels, which are represented in gray. You can see that before the pandemic, it was hovering around 6,000 eviction filings each month, but we have clearly surpassed that this year in 2023, especially in recent months, with the September eviction total being 7,800 filings. I'm going to actually turn it over to Scott now to talk a little bit about permits and the development pipeline. So Scott.
Yep, thank you. So one of the things we've been looking at is obviously there's some kind of housing shortage, and obviously if you are working in current planning or zoning, you know that developments are still coming in and you're still going through these and everybody's as busy as they have been. So what does that mean for the near term as far as new housing units? So we receive residential permit data, and we looked at it going back to 2000, and this chart shows single family, multifamily, and then you can see the line there is total units. We're not anywhere near where we were at the height, but we are about as high as I think higher than we have been since the economic downturn 15 years ago. Wow, 15 years ago. And we've seen a 25% increase in permits the first half of this year compared to last year. So permit activity is picking up. Let's go to the next slide and see what that means for our pipeline. So as I mentioned, developments. You guys are all still pumping out developments, getting them through city council, town council, and what we wanted to see was when are those developments going to start having housing units that people can actually move into. So we looked at all the developments and we looked at all of the permits, and we saw which ones have had permit activity in the last 2 years or 3 years. Sorry, if they pulled a permit in the last 3 years, we consider them active. And so all of the red ones on the screen right now have had at least one permit pulled in that time period. The orange ones, or the orange yellow ones, those are ones that have been platted but haven't had permit activity start yet. So from that analysis, we find that there's 275,000 housing units that are in the pipeline that we can see those developments are active and those are coming soon. And of those, 178,000 are in what we would consider active projects. And if we're seeing the average number of activity that we've seen over the past few years, that's almost 3 years worth of units that could be built without any other developments getting approved in the next 3 years. We could get that many developments, that our normal amount of housing units built in those developments. And then of course we have an additional 97,000 housing units in projects that haven't even started yet. So we've got a lot of stuff coming. We know that there are problems with supply chain and with construction labor, of course, but at least things have been approved by the cities and towns. And so when home builders are complaining that they're not approving stuff fast enough, we can start looking at this kind of data to say, yes, we've seen plenty of things getting approved. Now, if we can get all the factors together to start getting this stuff built, then we're going to be a lot better shape. And I think I have one more slide on this, correct? So here are those numbers that I just mentioned. So total pipeline in 2021 was 239,000 units, but today we're seeing 275,000. Only 63,000 were platted but not started. But today we see 97,000 that are waiting to get started. And then in the active developments, the units are pretty close. They're down a little bit, but there's still over 100,000 units that are in developments that are actively building right now. I think I'm going to turn it back over to Maggie and she will finish off.
Yes, thanks, Scott. So I know that we just dropped a ton of data on you all. This presentation will be made available, but we did make this kind of summary takeaways slide to wrap up. So in the economy, we're seeing robust economic growth, diversifying economy. Inflation has stabilized, but is higher in certain components. We're seeing an increasing cost of living that could impact attractiveness for our region. Looking at housing, completions are back at 2007 levels. We're seeing increased permit activity, a decrease in the median sale price, increase in vacancy rate, so more availability, and we're seeing affordability easing in some submarkets. So in certain areas in the region, there are affordable and available units. And then finally, for real estate, we're seeing that investor activity is low in housing transactions. We're seeing that fewer short-term rentals could open housing to permanent residents, and then a 15% increase in approved residential pipeline. And that just about wraps things up. We do have a Housing Data Explorer, which is our interactive dashboard summarizing housing and affordability trends in the region. We recently updated that with sales and rent data through Q2 of this year, and the next update will be for Q4 of this year. That'll be early next year. But we've got a link there. We've got a link to some of our other data sites, and please let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Scott. Does anyone have any questions for either of them?
This is Mylen Penkiewicz from City of Tempe. I have a question about the cost-burdened households. I went into the Housing Data Explorer. I can see a graph, but I do not see a map with the tracks like the one that was showed in the PowerPoint slide. Is that publicly available?
We can definitely make it available. So this presentation will be sent out, and if you specifically want just the image file, just go ahead and email Scott or me and let us know. Yeah, our interactive dashboard is mainly focused on the tables and charts, but the maps can be made available.
I think for the benefit of all of us and to be able to show our elected officials the greater areas of impact where we're seeing that cost burden households, housing affordability issues, that's a bigger, that's an easier part for our elected officials to understand and be able to do something about rather than just an overall view at a city or even the MAG area. So yes, Tempe would really like to have that information.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much for the feedback.
That's a great point, Mylen, sorry. And I just want to mention Anubhav, our boss, gave this presentation, almost exact presentation, to Management Committee and Regional Council earlier this month. So they have seen it, but there's definitely a difference between seeing it at the meeting and then being able to look at it on your own. So we can definitely make that available.
This is Adam with the City of Scottsdale. I have a question. Can you respond to the number of apartments that are available and kind of what classifies as available, and were all units that had C of Os basically bulked into that? And the only reason I'm asking is there was a pocket kind of in that South Scottsdale, North Tempe area that seemed to be the largest circle of available units, but those units, at least during the reporting period, may not have had enough time to get absorbed into the marketplace. And so I'm wondering, if it were to be available longer in the marketing period, would it still show availability? And rather than showing it as a number of units available, is there a corresponding vacancy rate that can be assigned? Or occupancy rate that could be assigned? Because generally, at least for Scottsdale, our vacancy rate has been, less than 3%. So it seemed to be kind of a big number there, is what I saw.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. Scott Bridwell, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, so the data source for that is real data. And I think the comment that you're making is correct. When you look at the vacancy rates in sort of what they call the lease up category versus the established category, then they are significantly different. So it could very well be that those are new apartment complexes that really haven't had time to stabilize.
Great. Thank you very much. And thanks for all the work you guys do. Appreciate it.
I want to clarify when Scott's saying that that's real data, that's a company called Real Data. We're not just saying.
Yes, I got it. Thanks, Scott.
That was a great presentation, and it was on for information and discussion. So unless anyone has any other questions, we'll move to number 6. Okay, number 6 is a presentation of the 2022 MAG Employer Database. Michael Wu will provide the update. This item is on for information and discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the MAG PopTech Committee. This is actually Peter Burnett. Michael Wu has fallen ill, and so I'm giving the presentation for him. I'm the Socioeconomic Research Program Manager. I work with Michael Wu. You've probably all seen his emails about the employer database. And so I work closely with him on the data, but he really deserves all the credit and the work that he's doing here. I was hoping he'd be able to give the presentation, but I'm happy to fill in for him at this time as well. So basically, you probably saw, hopefully you all saw that we released the 2022 employer database just a couple weeks ago. We sent everybody emails. If you did not get an email, please let me know. We want to make sure it's available to you. But with that release, just wanted to show some summarized data, some summarized information on the data. So the data is 2022, but it builds off of the 2021 data. So it's really from July 21 through 22. There are some exceptions that we go beyond that June date if we see some larger employers or significant employers within the 2022 calendar year. The region we focus on is Maricopa County and Pinal County. And for the foreign-owned employers, we call the FDI, we update that statewide each year as well. As you know, the data is for employers with 5 or more employees, and then the FDI businesses we update for the 1+ employers. So just a little bit of background. We've been developing the data since every year since 2021, and the database evolves every year, and the process evolves, and we add to it and enhance it. We got some great data sources. One of the main data sources we use is Dun & Bradstreet for a lot of the smaller employers and some bigger ones, but we rely heavily on the Maricopa County Trip Reduction Program data for many of the employers with 50 or more employees. Also, a big part of the database that we update is the public employment data, and we receive that data from you, from our member agencies. And at this time, I want to thank everybody for all the help that you provide, not only with that data, but in the review. I know we sent out some emails kind of last minute to some of you to answer some questions that we had and some concerns on some different employment numbers. And we really couldn't do this database without you. We really need your local knowledge and assistance. So thank you for that. So we mesh all the data sources together, we bring them in, we check for duplicates, we add data, we delete data, we check for close. It's all kind of that middle slide, that middle graphic there is just kind of a big melting pot for everything that we try to put together. It's a lot of work. Again, I want to give Michael credit for all the work that he does put into this. But from there, then we turn it into a spatial component, and we're able to analyze the data spatially. As I mentioned before, we send it out to you for review if we have questions and so forth. And then if you see anything issues, we'd love to hear back and love to enhance the data for the next year's database. So some of the other sources you see down at the bottom, we have sources like GPEC, U of A, some internet research. We use Google a lot, business journals. We try to stay on top of any news and so forth. But an example like GPEC and U of A, they're able to give us some new employers. So they do a lot of business attraction. One example of that on this slide here is just a map of all of the business locates that we received from GPEC since 2017. It accounts for over 260 businesses. That it also accounts for almost 55,000 jobs, and we track these businesses over the years to make sure that we update the proper number of employment, and this is a great resource for us to make sure we're catching the new employers. That's just an example there of some of the other sources we use. This is a quick map to show just where the employment concentration is as of the 2022 employer database. The pattern follows similar to what you've seen, and you can see heavy employment in some major job centers that we've had, but this just gives a quick snapshot of where the employment concentration is. So some different stats. I'm going to focus the numbers on this just on the overall MAG region, which would be Maricopa County, Pinal County combined. The number of businesses, we saw an increase of 5.2%, up to 87,100 businesses that are 5+. And then the number of employees, an increase of 2.6%. This follows the increase is consistent with the increases we've seen in the past years. Just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of those numbers. So this is an interesting graphic. You can see down we're comparing 21 to 2022 by different sizes of employment. The bluish gray area shows smaller employers with 5 to 19 employees. You can see on the left-hand side there that those businesses tend to grow more, which makes sense. They're smaller businesses, they're startups. They have a little bit more room for creating a business, creating a record. You don't see that as much in the larger employers because they're already established. You don't just create a large employer in most cases, but we do see some growth there. The job growth on the right, comparing the two and the different sizes, we're seeing growth in basically all categories of businesses, and especially in the larger businesses as well. So the top 10 largest employers listed here, it really hasn't changed over the year. The rankings from one to another, we saw state of Arizona move from a ranking of 2 in 2021 to number 1 ranking right now with over 30,000 jobs. But basically the top 10 stay consistent. But of interesting note is those top 10 employers make up over 180,000 employees, which is almost 10% of all the jobs in the MAG region. So clusters, what are clusters? We like to call it clusters. We take the NAICS industry codes and we put them into our defined clusters. It allows us to kind of generalize some of the industries into more general categories. Just so I know we can take NAICS industries by 2-digit NAICS, but this allows us to group things a little bit differently or a little bit more generalized by calling them our clusters. And we do put those in the data that we distribute as well and on the website. But we're seeing a lot of growth in the different clusters or industries. The areas with the green font have an increase of more than 4%, such as you can see healthcare, government, social and advocacy services, construction, and then of course transportation and distribution. This just gives a quick snapshot of seeing where we've seen some increases by industry. And then finally, like I said, mentioned earlier, we do update the foreign-owned businesses. This is statewide. Canada continues to be the top contributor as far as foreign-owned businesses. The statewide number of businesses is about 4,800 with over 127,000 jobs statewide that are foreign-owned. This data has become useful. We started collecting it several years ago and distributing it. It's useful to understand who's coming in and where they're coming from. These types of jobs typically tend to have higher wages, more longevity in the market, and so forth. So it's important to look at these for business attraction and retention. So with that concludes my presentation. I do want to make mention that the employer database, which is the link on the left-hand side, is currently being updated. We've not updated yet. Our developers are working on that, and that data should be up soon. With that, you'll be able to run more specific reports by different cities and municipalities, different areas of interest that you have. But of course, if there's anything that you're not able to get from the viewer, please feel free to contact Michael or myself, and we'd be happy to help you with some different requests for the data and analysis. So with that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Michael. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
is a discussion about member agencies permitting software and data that can be provided from this software. Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as you saw earlier, we've been doing a lot of research into the housing market and permits and completions specifically. And some questions came up that we just haven't been able to get a real good handle on. And we just wanted to, I guess, have a conversation or just ask, and maybe people can contribute some ideas. One thing we're interested in, we don't have access to right now, is if we would be able to get access to how many permit applications have been applied for. And we're talking all kinds of permits. Primarily, the biggest one would be housing permits, but we're also interested in grading or other infrastructure and stuff like that. We want to see if we can get, if it's possible to get the number of permits received, and then compare that to the number that are approved. There's a question that has come up about how often are cities and towns denying permits or rejecting them. And we've also heard some complaints from the housing industry that cities and towns are taking too long to review their permits and their applications. And we're wondering if that information is something that's available too and could be added to our analysis, or if there's anything else related to that. And so I can either open it up to any comments anybody has on this subject, or you could reach out to me individually and we can have a conversation about what your permitting software has available and what we might be able to get a copy of.
Scott, this is Andrea from the city of Buckeye. I don't know if our permitting system does that right now, but I do know that we have been focusing on trying to close that gap on some late reviews. So we should be able to have or be able to share some of those reports.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Scott, this is Adam. We commonly put out a lot of different reports, some that take longer than others based on our limitations of our permitting software. We just went through an RFP to update all that information or try to get a new permitting software for the city. That we're probably at least 2 years out from implementing that. And so trying to get that data on a custom format may be hit and miss from our work group at this time.
Okay. That makes sense. Thanks.
Scott, Rudy, City of Maricopa. City of Maricopa is more than willing to share application informations, plan reviews. Our system, it sometimes it has the correct information, sometimes it doesn't. But we could give you somewhat general ballpark of our average review times from internal side.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, Scott, this is Adam Cannon from Maricopa County. We've got some information that we could share with you about time frame permit review, and I'll put you in touch with the person that can help you with that.
Thank you very much.
Hey Scott, this is Bryant, Apache Junction. Two-thirds of the city of Apache Junction is covered by a for-profit water company, and to me it seems like this is a more complex thing, but we would obviously want to help and support whatever we have in terms of our permitting. But I think the question is going to become more and more complex, just permitting, but also just who also reviews these in different cities and towns. It's not going to be a one-size-fit-all across our region.
Yeah.
And so, something to be aware of is like that comes across in our city. Sometimes that even the for-profit, not just the government, can actually take a little longer.
That's definitely true. We don't hear as much about that, do we? I'm thinking primarily of development services departments, planning departments, that kind of stuff. The private water companies, we don't even have any.
Yeah, I just think for the broader policy discussion of trying to harm a city and town and their processes and trying to look towards us because that's where they can change is going to be something that comes more and more to light as the state legislature starts asking more and more questions. Well, why does it take so long? Or the private companies ask, it's like, well, at least in our world, 2/3 of any growth pretty much is going to have to go through this other water company. And it takes time, it just takes time.
That's a great point that I don't think we've really talked about when we've looked at this before. So thanks for bringing that up.
Just another point, yeah.
Scott, this is Brandon with Paradise Valley. I know that our data has typically been shared with Peter, but if there's any additional information that's required, we can obviously share that with you. And in terms of turnarounds for permit reviews, for all disciplines, it's typically 15 business days from submittal. So I don't know if that number can be shared via email offline with you as well. We're happy to share with anything that is needed.
That's one of the things we're interested in. And I guess one thing I think I forgot to mention, it may be just my personal curiosity, but I think it would help our analysis. It'd be interesting to see how long the municipalities and the counties have the applications in before the comments go back out or something's approved. It'd also be interesting to see how long it takes before they come back after their comments. How long do the developers and the attorneys and the architects and everybody sit on their plans, or how long does it take to make the adjustments based on the comments? Because that's like kind of what Brian mentioned. That's another thing that doesn't get talked about as much. The cities are expected to turn it around pretty fast, but if you don't have it to review, you can't turn it around fast.
Scott, if I may, it might be helpful. I mean, not to burden MAG with more tasks, but it may be helpful for you all to send out a survey to collect that information and maybe separate plan review from case review, first submittal from second, third, and subsequent submittals if necessary, and then that way we can, be one voice, so to speak.
Yeah. I think we are probably going to do something like that. I just wanted to start the conversation, just get an idea. Are we, is this just a dream that we're never going to be able to get any of this stuff? It sounds like that's not. We may be able to get more than we've been getting, and could help some of this analysis. That'd be great. So yeah, look for that, and we'd appreciate any help anybody can provide.
Yes, this is Nick Leftich of the City of Apache Junction. I think another component that we have within our own city is that depending on the case type or the permit type, we have different review timelines. Yeah. Like when it comes to standard, like manufactured housing, we actually have, it's like a 5-day turnaround generally. But then there's a general residential project with a kind of a medium timeline, and then we have commercial developments, multifamily developments, and those end up on the longer end. And as Bryant said, for our city, it's like we have multiple agencies reviewing. Some of them are non-governmental, for-profit, and every agency actually has had its own review timeline, and that's affected us as a whole. And when it comes to how we have filtered and compiled comments and then sent them out just to keep everything together. So depending on the permit type, we have varying timelines and development pipelines, and we've definitely seen that play out differently per project type.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Any last thoughts or comments?
Okay, thank you, everybody. We will be, I'm sure in the next month or two, we will put together some kind of survey or some kind of information gathering thing just to find out what else is there that we could use, because we love data. You guys know that. We want it all.
Thank you. Okay, number 8 is an update on the Arizona Zoning Atlas. Scott Wilkin will provide the update. Item is on for information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is, I guess, update was probably not the best word to put on here because I've never talked about this before, but we've been contacted by some folks at Arizona State in the planning, their planning school, who are interested in creating a statewide zoning map for Arizona. There is a national effort to create a national zoning map that's coming out of Cornell, I think. It started up there. They've done, which one did they do? They did Connecticut, which I think probably took about 7-8 minutes, probably, because it's Connecticut. It's all large lot residential. Arizona is going to be a big, different beast, and they're starting the process. In a couple weeks, they're going to have kind of a guidance committee, a steering committee. We're going to take part in that. But you should expect probably early next year to start getting contacted by some students at ASU who are looking for zoning data. They're developing the use case to make it so that it's something that isn't just a thing that exists and nobody uses. They want to make sure that it's something valuable. So that's where we're going to help them develop that as well. But I just wanted to give you a heads up that is something that they're talking about now and plan on doing starting next year, and to be on the lookout for that. And I'll provide more updates when I have more information than I do now, which is I gave you everything I know pretty much. So if there's any questions, I can try and answer them, but it's pretty early stages right now.
Thanks, Scott. I'm having some issues with unstable internet. So if I'm speaking and it's because I can't hear you. So I apologize for that. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Scott?
Just a comment. This is Mylan from Tempe. I guess that we probably do need to consider that if that project is undertaken, our zoning maps are living and changing. So there would be a snapshot in time unless there is a way to collect the data that it captures our own jurisdiction's changes when they happen.
Yeah, that's exactly what the first thing we told them. How are you going to keep this updated? If it's not current, it's useless. So that's probably the biggest challenge they have. And we're hoping that a lot of cities and towns have some kind of robust GIS that they can plug into. But they're working on that, and but you're exactly right. That's the biggest challenge, because that's one of the reasons that MAG in our division, we don't do much with zoning, because it changes so often. So they're trying to figure that out too.
Hey, Scott, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I tried to look at just Phoenix, Tempe, and Mesa's zoning in relationship to the light rail. And it was difficult with just 3 municipalities trying to conflate, one might have more single family residential, Tempe was the only one that had anything for agriculture. All 3 of them, you get to their downtown areas, have like just the downtown area zone. So they don't really define anything separate from that. So I was interested in, and that's just the big cities that have a GIS. Like you just said, there's going to be a lot of places that don't have. Is the goal of this to try to conflate everybody into the same zones? Or are they just looking to take whatever everybody has and put it into one large giant map, one large giant database? It seems like it would end up with a lot of categories that a lot of municipalities wouldn't use.
I don't know the answer to that. I can compare it to what we do with general plans, because the general plans, there's not as many general plan categories as there are zoning districts in this region, but there are still a lot. And so what we do when we map it is we do a generalized, we do a MAG standard of general plan, and put that across the board. But we're talking about adding something where you can actually see what the actual name of it is if you click on it per the city or town, right? So you can see both a generalized thing, but then the specific one that is in that general plan. If they choose to do that, I think that might be a good way to do it, but I don't know what their thoughts are. It's not going to be very useful if you can't see, if it just says downtown or it just says residential. That doesn't do anybody any good. So hopefully they're going to figure out a way to get it so you can either hover over it or click on it and see what it specifically says, or take you to that part of the zoning ordinance. I don't know what their plans are, but we're not doing it. I'm glad we're not doing it, because man, I don't know how to overcome all this stuff, but they're working on it.
Right, understood.
This is Nick Leftwich with the City of Apache Junction again. The two questions just asked would be critical to us too. The constantly changing nature of a zoning map, but also having proper zoning. Like in Apache Junction, we don't have the equivalent zoning that Mesa does, for instance, just next door. And even then, we get questions from realtors or interested buyers looking at the zoning of a property, and they're using like an old MLS map or a county map that has a completely different zoning in terms of the tables and land uses. And if there's like one resource that everyone's going to try to start using and it ends up giving people, I guess, conflicting information or information that's zoning of one city but not zoning for another, then we're going to have a lot of people who end up buying a property thinking it's for a specific use. And on a micro level, we're going to have a lot of conflicts just with what I see already with MLS data.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm glad we're not doing it. A lot of things to be figured out, a lot of challenges with this. It's been done in other states, so hopefully they can learn from what people in other states have done. But yeah, I don't know how they're gonna do it, but I will let you know when I know more.
Scott, Andrea from the City of Buckeye. You know how we actually send you over our ordinances for property that's been annexed? Is it something that we can do with the rezones? Is that, we can share our ordinances when they get adopted?
Possibly. That might be a good way to do it. Stay tuned for that. I don't know what they're going to want to do. I don't want you to send zoning ordinance, or you can, but not for this. I want, if they're going to want the zoning ordinances, they're going to set up some way for you to send them to them. But I don't know what their plans are. That seems like a good idea, but I don't know.
Okay, sounds like everyone has asked their question or comment. Are we ready to move to number 9, which is an update on the recruitment of a new vice chair for PopTech? Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in case anybody didn't know, we expect this is Crystal's last meeting as chair, and I wanted to first say thank you very much for your 4 years of service. Fantastic job chairing this committee, and I think you even stepped in a few times as vice chair to take over when the previous chair wasn't able to attend. So thank you for everything you've done for us. The MAG's technical committees, the chair and vice chair serve for 2 years. Once the chair, you start off as vice chair, typically serve that for 2 years, and then once that 2 years is over, then you become chair and serve for 2 years there, and then you are no longer chair. At the end of this year, Crystal's term as chair will be over, and Bryant from Apache Junction will become chair starting next year. And so we've been looking for a new vice chair to just take over that starting January 1st. For this committee, typically we've had a city or town manager in those two positions. And we do have some interest. I just found out earlier during this meeting, we have interest from somebody, a city manager who expressed interest today, and I expect to get a letter of interest that I can send to the regional council chair soon. And if all goes well, then that person will get appointed at regional council executive committee in November, and then we'll start at the beginning of next year. Typically what we do is when we have a new chair and vice chair, and the previous member kind of stays on and attends as to get the information and help the manager out with the technical aspects of it. If you've been on the committee for years, we don't want to lose your expertise. So Nick has been attending alongside Bryant. I think I saw Jose on earlier. He's been helping Crystal with some of the technical stuff while she's been chair. And so we expect that whoever the new chair is will still have another member attending, and occasionally if the chair or vice chair can't attend, then that member would be the voting member that meeting. So that's normally how we do it, and we think we've got somebody lined up to start early next year. So if you do know your city or town manager might be interested, let me know as soon as possible. But I think we may have that covered. So thanks.
Thanks, Scott. Does anyone have any questions?
Just a huge thank you, Crystal. Thank you.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. It's a fantastic committee to be a part of. So the next item is the request for future agenda items. Is there any request by a committee member for an item for a future agenda? Okay, hearing none. The next meeting of the MEG PopTac is scheduled for Tuesday, November 4th.
I think Crystal froze at the very last moment of her very last meeting, and now she's gone. So Bryant, can you adjourn the meeting?
Well, that's kind of fun. All right, everybody, we'll go ahead and call for an adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
We don't need a motion.
Oh, we don't need. All right, we're adjourning. Thank you, everybody. 11:21. Thank you all.
Happy Halloween.